My name is Nate Wald. I'm from Lodgegrass, Montana. I've been a TCA member for 20 years. I got started 30 some years ago. I was in college actually when I started, and we were just fooling around in the cabin barn and found a Bruce Grant book and just scraped some calf hides and soaked it up and just started trying to tie buttons and doing those sorts of things. And then I saw a pair of Rommel reins hanging in a store and really fascinated me, and I just thought I'd try and build some of my own stuff that I could use out of rawhide, and just went from there. Really got infatuated with it and haven't stopped since. When I first started, I was always thinking about it every spare minute. You know, I needed to be in there learning and doing all that. And I don't think that's changed. I mean, when I do other things, you know, we got a ranch there and I'm busy with a lot of other things, and I raise a bunch of horses and ride a lot of horses, but that shop's always pulling me in. You know, anytime I'm not having to be real busy with something else, I'm always trying to get into that shop, and I'm always thinking about what projects I'm working on and what I can do better. Then asked me to demonstrate how I would do a turnback on the end of a rein body and get it ready to tie a cover button over top of the turnback. So if I braided this rein body, this is an 8-plait square braid. If I made a pair of Rommel reins and this was the left side and this was the right side of my rein, I'm not just going to turn it back any old way. I want both of these rein loops to be standing straight up, if you know what I mean, so that the eye is coming in from the side. That's the way it's going to be straight when you're using the Rommels. So I'm not going to bend one this way and bend one the other way and have them sitting there like this. I want them both to be flat side out, one to one side and one to the other. So I'm going to pay careful attention to, as I follow this braid up and around, which is the same side on the other side, and do them both exactly the same. And so when I turn this back, I'm not going to turn it back this way. I want it to set this way, so I'm going to make my loop come back up under itself and turn back that direction. And I want to follow, the way I do it, I want to follow my same line of directions. I've got my lines coming down this way, so I'm going to turn this thing up under itself so that thing is always this direction when it's alongside of where your rein chains go in. I don't want them hanging there like that. So what I do is I keep them exactly the way they're braided. I'll do 4 there and 4 there. And generally, we got some waxed thread, some of that good stuff. It's not waxed. Okay, it's not going to hang on to itself. But anyway, I turn this thing back, and I don't go way back up here. I just have, I don't know, that's probably less than an inch there. I don't like big old honking loops on there. I want it to be pretty small, and I want it to come into itself pretty well. So I'm going to take that, and I'll probably go around that thing. If I'm by myself with my waxed, I'll just go around tight and it'll hold on to itself. And I'm going to get that up above where I want, and I'm going to mash that pretty flat. That's good enough to hold her.
Where'd that cigarette lighter go? Oh, I got it right here.
I'm thinking the same thing.
So I've got that tied down, but I'm going to stay in the same angle that I braided, and I'm just going to come in and leave these all hang to this side, and I'll just start right here, get the closest one I can find, and I'll just come up under 2 here.
Under how many? How many you come under?
I'm coming under 2 there.
Under 2?
Yep. If I was doing a under 3, over 3, whatever, I'd come up under, you know, more than that, just whatever my braid is.
So the key here is to fold them under and keep them standing straight up. As you tie these, whenever you're all done, you want them standing straight up, all turned under.
And I'm not going to pull them singing tight here. I'm just going to get them, you know, sometimes with rawhide, it may be way out here, but I'll just get everything started and straight. Then I'm going to come under the next. I'm just not going to go in anywhere. If I did this one here, I'm going to come under the next set of passes. Which is my string. Here we go. Man, I don't like this parachute cord.
I don't like it either.
Rawhide kind of stays where you put it. But the main thing is to keep that same angle if you can. And just go under that next set of crosses.
And then you want it so far up or so far down that it weighs it in.
And the thing to do is when you get this down through the loops here on his braid, they'll all be uniform. This will be uniform on both sides, so that his cover button will look real pretty. You won't have to do a whole lot to it.
That's the main thing, yeah.
Make it look pretty.
Right.
Other than tying his ring knots and putting his feel in there, whatever. Depends on how he wants to do it. But as you can see here, they come straight down into the end of the braid, and like these four here will come straight down into these braids down here.
If this is my rein body, I'm going to make sure that this line of crosses follows all the way up around to the other side so that everything is the same side facing each the same way. So I want that all to be this way. And so if I turn this back, this direction, I want that loop to go up under itself or over itself so that it doesn't stand sideways like this. I want it to be straight up and down alongside the neck of the horse.
So you're turning it to where, let's see if I get this right. The way that you're braiding, you're actually kind of going to the back side of the way you're
I'm
doing
just going
strings
up,
to
right.
The strings closest to the rein line.
Right, and following the same, because I want my loop to be, if this is the horse's neck, I want my loop to be standing up like that. I don't want it to be sitting sideways like that where it goes into the rein chains. And I want both sides to be the same, and I want this set of crosses to be the same side that go into the loops on the other set of crosses. I don't want to have a twist and have things go in a different way. And I like them pretty short, so I'm going to keep everything going the same direction. And I'm going to figure out where I want that to go. And you're usually going to roll that back, try to keep everything the same. And I'm going to hang on to these on this side. Then I'm going to start working these strings in to my braid. So I'm going to come in here. I'm probably going to come into this set right here of doubles. Oh man, that just feels so much better than that plastic. I'm making it a point that if I come under this set of doubles, I just go to the next one in succession. It's actually just one string, but it's the next set of doubles going, and I follow that completely down so that everything is on it, a smooth taper, and everything's coming out of the string sort of at the braid at the same angle as what they were braided. I'm going to come in here, and it looks to me like this string was one pass higher than the string on this side. So to keep everything natural, I'm going to come in under this next set of doubles below this side. And that should keep everything. This will go in between these strings. This will go in between these, and it should just follow one set of strings down on the other side. Then I'll go under this next string. Got a pair of pliers.
Your pliers.
Or the old teeth are always about as good, but bueno. Okay, so I've got everything laid in there on that taper. At this point, depending on what my core is, I kind of like to leave it to where it follows in with that taper, but then I'll, you want me to cut that off or not?
Yeah.
I'll just keep a little enough tension on that to where it will kind of fall back in there, but it stays through there until I get to my end, so I've got that taper there. And then I'll kind of suck these things down.
Better?
Oh. Yeah. Rawhide kind of stays where you put it. Yep. So I want a real natural taper, and I don't want that thing to be great big, and I don't want to pull those in there so tight that I make that thing look like that. You know, I just want that whole thing to follow kind of two lines down around there. If I pull them too tight, you end up with that thing kind of being wide on one side and the belly on the other, and you can't hardly fill it with leather or do whatever you want. So I'll get them about as tight as I can pull them, and then I'll just kind of bring everything back until it's, you know, looks pretty square. And then I'll generally, like these strings are going to fall right in between the ones. It doesn't really matter because you're going to cut them off, but they can do there. And I've done different things. I mean, if you feel like you need to roll back and double this over this one and come back under there somewhere to make it secure, you can do that as long as you're working towards everything having a good natural taper and laying in itself. I'm comfortable with this by the time I'm done putting my base and everything on. And I'm also going to, at this point, I've got one of those pliers kind of with, like Pablo, with the round. So I've got a, yeah. So I'll get this in here like this, and right above my deal, I'm going to go ahead and get that pretty round. And then I'll have a vise generally too. I'll have that, my Clint's going to be my vise. And I'm going to get that right up above these deals and at the point of my thing. Nylon.
Really pull it. Just
Can you?
Really pull it.
You know I'm going to break it, don't
No,
you?
you're not going to break that. How can you break that? See there?
Okay. Then I'll roll it over in my vise. Keep that tension on it. Then I'm going to I'll go around twice. Pull that down. And I'll probably go to the other side and do that again. Then I'll come over one more, not over that. And I'm going to leave that.
I wanted to use that lighter.
So that to me, by the time I'm done covering that with my final base and having everything all right, that's secure enough for me. I mean, if you feel better about doubling them back and coming out the other side, that's fine. You can do that. But I'll shape this up with my deal, get everything kind of good like that. And a lot of times what I'll do is if I'm doing this at night, say I braid my rein body, which I prefer, if I was going to braid a rein body, I'd prefer to start that day and braid the whole body without casing it back up or bagging it and finishing it or whatever. I mean, if it's 16 or 18 or even a really fine one, it's going to take me all day. I want all day. I would rather. I'm not saying I haven't thrown one in the barrel but they never seem to be exactly the same unless you braid the whole thing. And if I can, I would like to stay up that night and finish and get my turnbacks done. But at this point, I might have it in my vise again, Mr. Vise, and then I'll come underneath here, through here, and I'll just go up about maybe an eighth or a quarter on that side, and then suck that in there, and that pulls down on both sides, and I'll flip it. And I'll work my way up that deal till I get to the end of where I'll come in there and flip it.
Pull it again.
Okay. Man, you're kind of handy. Would you just come to Montana and just hang on to my stuff? I'm just going to cut these off. I can do one of two things. I can come up through those things and tie everything off until I get here, suck them down tight and leave it till morning, and then cut this all off and go to shaping. These are a little wider for this string.
And something else you can do, you can put a set of vice grips in a vise and clamp those vice grips down on each deal there, each strand, roll it back and pull, and then get your cutters in there, and it just sucks back in there. I got some over there, but I wanted to see how strong they was, so I'm just watching.
Well, and another thing I'm doing is I'm not necessarily seeing how far I can pull this out of here so that it backs up under another string on me. I'd like to have it under both those strings, but if I look in here and I need just a little more of that to make that look a little more even with my strings next to it, I'll just leave a little of that. If that's going to fill kind of a hole for me there, I'll just leave a little of that. I'll go back to my vise. Okay, roll me over. Sorry.
You can tow a truck with this.
Yeah, this seems pretty strong.
No, with this whole deal here, that not come out.
That tow rope would make
I'm sorry, Enrique. Where you at? I'm sorry. Calling those reins a tow rope.
No, that's nice enough, buddy.
Let's try it. Yeah? Let's see if that's true.
But no, that's in there now. It's not going anywhere.
No,
Oh, no.
no way.
You could even go to Montana and ride those horses in Montana with that, and they wouldn't pull them out.
Oh no, I got to pull on them harder than that. I'll just go. Okay, now you want to burn that off there?
Not
No.
really.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you smoke, don't you?
Estúpido.
Well, that's what I'm going to do, and then while that rawhide is damp like that and cased, you can get that thing just as round and as good. And if you want, I mean, this is just a really nice size for a good working set of 8-strand reins. If you were doing a really fancy fine set and wanted that smoother than that, I mean, you can go back and forth over that doing that same thing until you got a solid, or you can whip it on there too and just get it as tight as you can do it. And by the time you do this with cased rawhide and get that just as nice as you want it, you could take that off there and it'd be formed. By the time that dries in the morning, that's going to be just as smooth and as solid as you made it when it's wrapped like that. But that's where I'm going to start, and then I would you can sand on that and get it smoother. The only thing I'm going to need to do with that for me to finish this, and I guess I could probably do that, but if I had a little piece of I just use skirting leather, just Herman Oak plain veg tan leather, and it's probably just a little thin old piece.
Sack.
One pass is enough to be strong.
That may not be the sack.
Pull out or anything like that.
It is to me. If I follow each string down and tie it down like this, I'm not worried about it one bit.
I'd always tried to go twice, and then it makes the turnback knot too long. Yeah, it's really bulky.
I don't like a big old long turn back. I like 1.5 inches probably of a base at the most.
Right. Then you've seen how like Brett does his, where he doesn't have a core in the turnback and he'll hammer it flat, like on a 12 flat. I mean, you can't do it on 8, but on 12. Do you ever do that on yours, or do you leave the core in them?
I leave the core to this point because it gives me
A
my
shape,
taper.
because you can taper it. And
Yeah.
You're building around that. Okay.
Yeah.
He's not used to sharp knives.
No, that's a nice knife. For this size string and this size body, this would be all right.
Do you care if there's grain in there, or can you use a split? Just whatever.
You can. I don't mind using good leather for bases. I mean, I use scraps, but if it's that stuff out towards the shoulder that you pull it and it gets twice as big, I don't want to use that stuff. And I'll go, I don't know what my length is here, but. Now, if we had, do we have some glue? Some barge? Because I could just show you, or I can glue it on. It don't matter.
You know, Scott, down one end to the other to make it match up.
resultado.
I've done it twice. It's a lot of work, but it works.
It's gonna have to dry for
He
probably
does it with
5
a lot of
minutes.
work.
Dicen que tú vas a donde cuesta
Sí. Cuando llegas al final, vos tenés 8 tientos, ¿no es cierto?
When you come to the end, you have 8 strands.
Con 4,
With 4,
metes una lesna al medio de alma
you use a fit on the center like a body,
y trenzás lo que te va a llevar al loop.
and then you braid the length of what it's going to take you to do the loop.
Lo sacás.
Then you remove the fit,
Haces el loop
make
y con los otros 4 tientos,
and then with the other 4 strands,
con 2 hacen forma los pares.
with 2 you make the pairs,
Y con los otros 2 rompen los pares.
and then with the other 2 you break the pairs.
Entonces quedan los 8 tientos iguales.
And then the
¿Entiende?
8 strands are going to be all together, all similar.
It's like tying together a Honda, those Mexican swivel.
That's pretty cool.
The same thing.
I wouldn't have thought he'd have thought that up.
I wouldn't either.
You know,
Él no hubiera pensado que a ti se te hubiera ocurrido semejante cosa.
No, pero funciona, ¿eh? Funciona. Lo bueno de eso es que
Más fuerte.
no pasa esto, ¿viste? Esto es así. Al hacer 4 tientos así y los otros 4 así, esto queda perfecto. ¿Entiendes? Es más trabajo.
More teeny,
but
more.
it's not that much.
No. Lo importante es que la primera trenza que hagan, le pongan una lesna para que quede abierto en la trenza.
The first step is to insert the
Or
In the end of your braid.
or core. Then you take the core, okay?
when you pull it out.
Entonces con dos aparean, hacen los pares y con los otros 2 hacen toda la vuelta.
Also, if you got a core in there, you can cut that core, go up there and cut that core, leave it there at the end of where you want your loops at. Braid it, put that in there, braid it, pull it out, and it just makes a real smooth transition.
You crown your 4 go down.
Sí, into.
Well, you put them in or you
In
crown
the
them?
middle.
You put them down inside.
Exacto.
You hide them down inside in there.
Si la trenza de 8,
If it's an A flat,
usé cuerpo, o sea, el core, le saco un pedacito.
if you use a foundation on that A flat, then you remove a little piece.
The core,
Lo meto adentro, lo voy sacando para afuera y después lo pongo.
however long the loop is, like care the loop is.
Lo bueno de eso es que queda perfecto, queda como una pera. Ahora entendiste,
Then it will look like a,
Más trabajo,
like a pear
pero-
shape. I mean, it's going to be nice and beautiful.
lo que pasa es que esto es más rápido y si lo sabes hacer, esto más rápido.
This technique is a little quicker.
Más- y
Once you
si
know
lo
how
haces
to
abrir,
do it
más
this
rápido.
way, I mean, it's going to work. The other one's going
La
to
forma-
dry up here. In a pair of hobos, you do that on each end, and people don't know how you did it.
Yeah, then while they still are tempered, then I'll hang them. I've got a deal, and then I'll hang a weight off the end of them, usually with a dowel in between them, and hang like a sash weight in between. So I get a nice, real round hole in there, and it kind of forms around it. I do.
Okay, I just want to make sure that's okay and it's not going to
No, I do.
kink in the middle of them or anything.
It's not as easy to tie your buttons like when you have them all stretched plumb out, but I always hang mine so I get that body formed while that temper's in there. Yeah, that's what I do anyway.
Because that's the other thing. Once you make your fold in the middle and start tying your buttons on there, it's not always easy if they're bone dry to get it to where it's nice and tight and
Right.
they're close to where the connector comes through.
Yep. Yeah, I'll do. That's a good question. I will do a lot of work with. Do we have a cantle pliers?
Yeah, there's an area over here.
When I put this leather base on now, I don't skive my ends and try and lap them and do all of that anymore.
Because you're going to sand it.
What's that?
You're going to sand it and try to clean it up that
Yeah,
way.
and I never ever got them perfect, and I always had a hump, and I'd spend half an hour scraping everything down and cleaning it. So what I do now is I will just figure out which side I want to do that, and I'll just get this here and come here, and on a taper knot it'll take a taper, and then I'll just take my cantle pliers. And I have that leather dampened so it will form pretty good. And that's what I will have let dry. That's how I'll leave it.
And then will you go on and start doing your foundations for your other box as it's drying, or do you go work on something else?
No, I'll generally hang that rein body and then mark out my button pattern and put my bases on. And if I do a long button on my reins, I'll do it like that too, just a leather collar. I'll put them on there like this. When that dries, then I'll cut that along that taper at a bit of an angle so it all goes like that. And I can just get them a lot more even doing that than trying to lap them and end up with that hump on there. Then I'll just cut that away, and I can sand that.
That's pretty cool.
I can do that on my little belt sander and just get everything smooth. And on a taper, you're going to have, this is it's going to naturally pull this, so it's going to look a little bit like that. And I'll just take a sharp knife and skin that around and make sure that everything is, and this side's going to be the exact opposite. So I'll take, a 1/16 or something off that and get everything just all good and smooth. And that's what I'll end up with. And I'll do my long buttons the same way. I'll just mark them out, put them on there, and bring them around like that, and then cut those off later and smooth everything up. My any round buttons, I'm going to go through the body and tie that little 2-string, or 4-string ring button, whatever. That's what I do. You can cut string all the same size, so every time you do one of those, it'll all be the same size base and everything like that. So.
Now, does that change for your Rommel, the process or the dimensions or anything like that?
Well, dimensions will. I mean,
right.
You're going to be going around a bigger body, and if you want, usually the size difference between your Rommel and your reins, when you put that same base on there, is going to jump your size up kind of a natural step. If you wanted way bigger buttons on your Rommels or a little heavier or whatever, you could, I'd cut my base string a little heavier to make my 4-string ring knot and go that route.
But you leave the core in and you pull it around and tie the turnback itself just the same way?
Yeah, it depends. Yeah, I would do my...
I just had trouble in the past because by the time I get ready to do it, the core for my Rommel is so dry that I can't get that thing pulled around tight enough to be... It ends up being that long, the loop does.
If I'm going to do my turnback on a Rommel, and say it's a big heavy 12-string or something, I will go back in there and cut that core out of that thing to bring it around in my loop. Okay. I despise little weak turnbacks for Rommels or quirts or anything like that, but you also can't have that thing being a ½ inch around and bend it around there and get any kind of a shape to it. So I'd pull the core out of there, or say I've got a 16 strand. A lot of times at the bottom of that, I'll take my 4 inside strings and braid 4 and braid a 12 around that little core of 4. It brings it down a size. You still got your strength in there, and then I'll turn that back down there on the end.
Here we just try laying those strings in there, just braid around those strings.
Yeah, you can do that
like
too.
Having 2 2x4s, so to speak, one bend one way,
Right.
bend another way, but not very much the other way.
Yep.
So then do you just hide your transition under your button?
You understand it?
What's that? Yeah, generally when you drop those 4, you drop to the 4 and then braid the 12 over. When you come back into where your 16 was with that core, if you tie in right below that, that's going to bring everything to be tapered really nice.
If you put over the top, it's just going to lay right over the top of where you went down to 12. Right?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, it'll actually be a little above that probably, right to where you're to your 16 or whatever it is.
Use
Yeah.
twisted cores in your Rommels?
braided in my romels unless somebody wants it dang sure stiff. You know, I like a stiffer romel. It should pick up like a quirt when you use it, so I don't like a real raggy one. So I do like a rawhide core in my romels, but I usually braid them.
Okay.
When you do your 4-string ring knots, do you use that rawhide dry or tempered?
Oh, generally kind of, it's usually kind of dry, you know.
I just something you had mentioned to me, like in Arizona this year that people might not think of either is, you know, I tied those buttons on rawhide bases to keep it natural, but I didn't let it dry before I tied the buttons over, and then the foundation shrank, and then so it made the cover button not as, you know, tight.
Yeah, see, I want to tie my buttons on the day after I tie or however, but I'm going to tie all my bases on, and that's going to sit a day before I ever tie my cover buttons on there because I want them dry, and that's going to be the size. Like you say, if you tie a ring button on there cased and tempered and then tie a pineapple or a gaucho or whatever you tie over that, it's
especially in the humidity.
exactly.
Might be more than a day.
Weigh about 3 days.
Yeah, you don't like to be able to grab your knot and have the rotation thing going on with you. But does everybody know that little base ring button? I think everybody probably
I think
does. But
we probably need to show people. You want to tie it over the parachute cord?
You're talking about the one that you run through the braid?
yeah,
Now go ahead. I'm going to give us two strings about a foot long.
Nate, do you have a good rule of thumb or philosophy behind figuring out how big to make your foundations for like a set of reins? Or do you just experiment a little bit, find something that's pleasing, and then stick to it?
yeah, I'll do that. Like if I've got a making a set of using reins or something that I'm making all the time. I mean, I pretty much know if I've got some old button string left that if I want to use that for my bases, what size my knots are going to be and everything. And but if I've got something where everything has to be really right, or I'm going to tie a really fine button over it, and I will just take a little piece of scrap, you know, of this exact same braid, exact same core, all of that stuff, and tie a couple of different bases, and then tie my buttons on there. I've got pieces all over the place in boxes that, you know, because once you get going, it's really good to know that everything is going to work just right. And you can spend a lot of time. Yeah, you can spend a lot of time. I would rather do that on a little piece and get everything just right than manhandle my 16 flat nice rein bodies and be putting different string through there and then cutting that off and doing this and that. I'd rather get it just right, leave it till the next day, roll everything good and have it just like I would do, and take off with all my string cut the size I need.
Sometimes I overbuild everything.
But you're a saddle maker.
Right. So we're prone to that.
Well, everybody is.
But you know, like if you don't have something for scale sitting next to you to kind of go off of, or you don't have the experience of using correct reins and things, it can get away from you pretty quick.
It can, and I always we think about how we want our project to look, and so we build our rein body that way with our bases and everything. But it takes some time and some thought to realize that you're going to cover that with another, and it isn't just one layer of rawhide. I mean, if you're going around a base, you're going around that thing on all three-dimensional sides, so you're building that thing up probably 4 times bigger than, and that's why a lot of people that start out, they end up with a set of reins that, I mean, they go like this. Everything's just magnified 3 or 4 times.
But that's how mine works.
When what's pleasing to me is a nice smooth line, you know, where everything has a taper all down through the whole series of buttons or however you're going to do it. But it's just like another natural size up from your rein body, you know, not just this big chunky deal. And so we need to look at that thing for how we know it's going to have that button tied on it and magnify it. So a lot of times your bases don't need to be very dang big. You know, I'll tie a little bitty ring button on there with some fine string to where it's not a heck of a lot to go around, but it's, by the time that button's tied, it's going to be a nice fat little gaucho button around there. So if I marked out my pattern, and a lot of times I'll just figure, you know, you can count strings. Like if I want it 5/8 between the centers of my buttons or whatever, for whatever gap I want between them, and have everything laid out. If you've done a nice even braid, that might be every third string. And that's a good way to set up this stuff, is if I come back here and come under a set of strings, I can come through one here.
It's something I'd like to make comment on. They make these really, really nice Marks-a-Lot pins. It's got the real pretty tip that you can mark on those reins if you want to.
I know, but I screw
Don't
up.
do it.
I was just going to say, you
I
can
did
mark.
it one time, and I had to move my buttons, and that stuff you can't erase it.
Nope.
I got the nice set of reins there at the house I used a lot because they got Marks-a-Lot on it.
There are
That's why
some,
they're kind of named Marks a lot.
Yeah.
there are some heat activated pins, and then some that are erasable, but they come off with water. They're the silver tip pins. Lisa Sorrell
Nate,
sends
you
them.
have
Sells
the
them.
car
I've
key?
used them on weather before, but I've never used them
On that
on
back.
Something I
Is
use
that Carhartt bag in there?
is whenever I'm marking out stuff like that, is I got a needle with a thread on it, and I'll run it through the X's there when I'm laying them out. Tie a button, or not a button, but tie it in a knot, and then just continue on down. That thread doesn't leave a mark.
And it's your indicator.
That's a good
Right.
way.
That's how I do it.
Like I said, I'll count strings a lot.
Yeah.
You know, every fourth string I'll run a string under,
Count,
and
you got
then
that many fingers left?
I do. And then I'll do the other side, just making sure you're under the exact same string on the opposite side of your braid. But I'll lay those all out and get going. And anytime I have a small button on my reins, one of these is going to be the base under it generally. And you can cut all your base string the same size, so you know when you're done that everything's going to be real uniform. If one looks just a little light, you just cut another string just a little bigger, and you can really control what your buttons look like. I'm going to just twist all these, and you can do the pliers or whatever you want to make sure that all your hair sides up. And then I'm just going to crown these.
You run one in flesh stuff like backwards, so that when they come around,
I generally,
you just twist it when it comes out.
yeah, I just twist it when it comes out. I usually run them in the same way. I go flesh side out, but under here it doesn't matter too much. But I try to do them the same way.
Do you use them exposed though?
Sometimes, yeah, you got to be real careful then.
Right.
Yeah, I'll use them for a side button sometimes,
Yeah.
and you can actually tie that side button with these strings. But
You can tie that by crowning them and going over one and under one.
right, then that makes that little side button. Yeah, that's handy. For this
I use
deal,
that a
I'm
lot.
going to crown them, and I say I'm going to work them 4 times. I'm going to work them down through each other. This last one's going to go back through here. So I've crowned everything. I've worked them all down. Then I'm going to work them back up. So I'm going to take this string. I'm going to come up under the string next to it. And I'll just hold them all up under this finger out of my way. And this last one is going to come up through that pass.
The one thing that you got to remember too when you do this stuff is make sure, and this is all from experience, if you crown them facing, like he did, facing the eye, crown the other side facing the eye. Don't turn them over because you'll be off a deal.
And another thing that helped me with this knot is, for whatever reason, it made more sense to me. I work backwards. After I've crowned them and come up underneath like this, I'm going to work backwards of where I went. So right here now, I worked them down. I worked them back up, one under each of itself. And now I'm going to work each one down. This actually makes a pair of doubles. If you look at the string that come out alongside of it, this one should be to the left of that, and that makes you a pair of doubles. So I'm going to come up through that with this string. And then I'm going to work backwards because it's easier for me to see that pair of doubles than it is to go up here and try and find the next one. So I'm going to go up through that set of doubles. Go back up through this one. And then my last one. At this point, I tighten everything. I just take a hold and I pull that down, work my way around, and I just pull everything down good and snug at this point. So everything's tight, everything kind of looks like the one in front of it. Every now and then, if one's kind of out a little bit, I'll just reach under that and with a fid, pull that around, get everything snug and the same. And then my last pass, I'm just going to come back up. This is our set of doubles. So I'm going to come back under the 2, and it's going to come up alongside the string that comes up out of the body. Now if I'm using this on an end that I might want to cover, like with a little heel knot or something on, say I'm putting one of these on the end of a head stall or something that I want to come up everything out through the center of it. Like if this was all loose strings, then I'll come up through everything rather than out here. You can just come up under the outside of that just like you would otherwise. And I will, I'll use that quite a bit. Like if I ended something, if I didn't want it great big, if I ended maybe like a little light head stall thing, I might take one string and or take 4 out of that end and tie this and then just go right out the end with all the strings, and it makes you just a nice little end knot rather than be one in the middle of a body like that. So I'll use that just both to end a braid where I want a finish knot on the end of a braid, or in the middle of a body like this, just coming right up through alongside the other one. And I'll pull them all tight. Yeah, I'll just... And I'll usually tie, I might go down and have some marks, and I like to have room to kind of get in the way if you're trying to, got a bunch of strings through there and tie a bunch of them at a time. So I might put a set of strings through here and another one 3 or 4 knots down, tie all them. And when I'm done, I've got a little set of dental pliers with a groove in them, you know, and everything's going to be the same size. I might just mash those ends together, get everything real smooth, and then just take that same tool and bring it around there and smooth everything up and around, and then just make sure that everyone looks like the one below it. So.
Do you, if you put foundation on like this with leather, do you ever put, like what I've been doing is I put these rings to kind of lock it down and then put leather in between.
Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, that's not a bad way at all. Like I say, anytime I can use that with those strings through my body and I know it's not going to move, I will use it.
So then when you're going to do your long button, if you're going to end each of the foundations with a 4-string ring knot, you want to account for the width of those and subtract that from the piece of leather so
right.
that they finish at the same length as your turnback button.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, cut a 6 3/4 piece of leather or something if you know you're going to have a 1/4 inch of
Right.
one of those on either side. And that isn't a bad way to do like a nose button, because then if you let that dry and really square that knot up good, you've got a pretty good
But even on your
shape to
reins,
pull
though,
over.
on your reins, if you're going to do a long button, are you going to still do the ring knots in the end of it, or are you just going to do a piece of leather and glue it down and that's it?
Yeah, I generally just do this.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Time you get your braid over in there, your button
Yeah.
tied over it, it's not going anywhere.
No,
If
I've
you
never
use
had
good
one.
contacts, man, it won't come loose. Or,
Boy, I don't think
Where's it
so.
gonna go when you got something braided over it?
right, but I'm just saying if it would twist like what Nate was talking about when they were a different size, if it ever broke loose or something. But if you do a good job gluing it,
If I'm doing something where I think there's going to be like for example, I'll put quirt poppers on. I don't know if anybody's seen the way I'll do that, where I pull everything down over and don't have a loop, but just have it fixed to the end
Yeah.
of my deal.
I really like that. It just looks clean to me.
Yeah, if you do it clean, it does look pretty. I like it too, but what I'll do is I'll pull that popper down through there, and I'll take an awl. So if this was the end of my deal, and that was my popper just coming down off there, and this was where I had that hole down through it and all that, I'll punch a hole with an awl here, and a hole with an awl here, and I'll take a little. I use like a Versa groover, just a stitch groover, and I'll make a little trench around there, and I'll come in with a needle and a wax thread, come down through that, around this side, down through, around this side, back through, pull everything tight, tie that 2 or 3 times like that, and anchor them that way. I'd rather do that than put a brad or a nail down through it, just because I don't like the metal. But do that twice and have that pull into that groove. It keeps everything really smooth, and man, it's not
you don't
going.
have to say anything or
No.
account for it then again.
No.
And then, yeah.
And it's not going anywhere.
Right. And you'll just use like a stitch and all, like you'd use to hand sew something, or a fit all.
Yeah, I've got some pretty sharp fids, or I've got
Like you
whatever
don't
works.
mind if you cut the rawhide just a little bit going through, because you can't really fish them.
Yeah, I mean, I try to feel my way a little
Okay.
bit, but I'll just punch it through there. And,
Yeah.
But if you use a kid instead of diamond all, you're less likely.
Right.
right. But that's what all my bases will be, is either a piece of leather like that, or that knot through something in different sizes. And
Do you use curtain leather on your say you're gonna put a bunch of turn and a half buttons on there? Do you use curtain leather underneath those buttons, or do you use shaft leather?
I usually use skirting leather like that. I think it's got a little more body to it. And when I know how many bases I need, I'll cut everything. I'll just cut a nice long strip and just cut it all into chunks. And you just want to keep everything the same. As much as you can be the same under here, that's going to translate to what your button pattern looks like. Bases are as or more important than what you're tying up over the top there.
Well, like I said, I've struggled with them for a long time because I always think they need to be bigger so that they have that finished shape, not
Yeah.
thinking about the finished shape coming from the knot itself,
Right.
and just having barely enough shoulder to catch is really all you need.
Yep. Yeah, and I like a good square shoulder.
Right.
Don't when
edge it.
I do a base, don't make it so pretty that you edged everything and got that round shoulder on there. Yeah, I'd rather have a good square edge, make sure my turnbacks are way up above that, so that interweave string lays up over the top of that edge.
Right.
And then you've got your taper, and you've got everything out over the ends where it's not trying to pull back.
That ring knot is one of the drawings I added. If you want to get a shot of that, so somebody can see what is this tied. For this?
Yeah, get it
We
through
can
that.
just use, where's that knife? We can just use this. We can tie some more of those buttons.